Joining us now on the line is Deborah Hersman, who is the chairperson of the National Transportation Safety Board. These are the people that get called anytime there's a transportation disaster around the country, but they do much more than that, and she is wrapping up her time at the NTSB and has a new gig lined up. You've done, Deborah, do I have this right? You did 2 complete terms as chairperson, and we're in the middle of your 3rd, right?
That's right.
And you have a new gig, and I want to get that to the moment. I want to talk about some of the things that you feel like still need to be done over at the NTSB. But I just got to tap in, first of all, to this ongoing story about Flight 370. Now, I know this is not in the NTSB's backyard, but the NTSB is the preeminent organization in the world when it comes to aircraft disasters and investigating them and trying to figure out what went wrong. How has the NTSB been assisting in this matter, and what are the problems that the investigators are facing in this particular case?
Well, the good news is we have international protocols that help us participate in international investigations like this. And because the Boeing aircraft was manufactured here in the U.S., we have the right to participate in an accident investigation. Now, I think clearly we are all trying to figure out whether this is an accident or it's a criminal event or what, and we're deferring to our colleagues in Malaysia to lead this, but we have been providing support to them in their efforts, and we're doing that both through our headquarters team back here in D.C., but also with folks on the ground in Malaysia and also in Australia. So we're hoping that they're going to find the aircraft soon. We can get recorders and figure out what happened.
Yeah, and just to follow up one last time on that particular before we move on, and it's the recorders, but what will the recorders really tell you? I mean, we'll know something about how the aircraft was acting, but as I understand it, the voice recorders are on a 2-hour loop, right?
That's right.
So we may never know what really happened as it was flying over, Malaysia.
That's right. If the recorders were working, they were recording the last 2 hours of the flight, and so it will really depend on what was being said or done in the cockpit as to what they'll find out if those recorders are recovered.
All right. So you're leaving the NTSB. What do you feel is left undone there?
Well, obviously, there's some big accident investigations that are outstanding that need to be completed. With the Asiana 214 event at San Francisco International Airport last year, we had a UPS aircraft that went down also last year, and so those are high on our aviation priority list. But we've also got a lot going on rail. Metro North up in New York and Connecticut has had a number of accidents. We're actually investigating 4 right now. And just this week, we had a 2-day forum on the issue of crude and ethanol transport via rail. And so we're seeing a boom in energy, and being able to get that out is a great thing for us as a nation, helps us move towards energy independence. But we don't have the infrastructure in place to do that, and we've got to look at how they're moving this product by rail and the accidents that have occurred so far.
Well, and Deborah Hersman, is today your last day on the job? Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Well, congratulations on that. That must be fun. Are you actually going into the office, or are you just going to sort of phone it in?
I am going into the office. Yes, I am.
You know, on the last day, what are they going to do, fire you? And actually, to that end, let me drag you into something political. You just talked about moving crude oil via truck, which is not only hazardous, I think, and dangerous, but also, ironically, it gives more carbon emissions out, which we're told by environmental people is a big problem. Do you think, in your opinion, as the chairman of the NTSB, that it would actually be safer and better to use a pipeline to move that oil?
So obviously there's a lot of different ways to move energy, and it's going to need to be moved in different ways to get to the to the end source where it needs to go, and that may be a combination of things, whether they're pipelines, trucks, or trains. What we're seeing is there is a lot of new production going on in certain areas of the country where they don't have pipelines, and so in essence, the railroads have become a moving pipeline where they're moving unit trains of 100 cars, carloads of this material, but those cars really were not necessarily designed to transport the flammable liquids that are in them, and we're seeing very tragic outcomes when they have a derailment and these tank cars are involved in a fire, and it really is a domino effect. Once one of them starts and releases their product, we're seeing multiple cars release product, and that obviously can be very dangerous to the communities around the tracks, but also a challenge for first responders as well.
Thank you for reminding me of that. It's something I think that needs to be part of the conversation as Keystone's being debated. Can I ask you one other thing? As a frequent traveler, and I know NTSB does a lot with the crashes and the aftermath, but there's one occurrence that's been happening lately. I think we've had 2 stories in the last 6 months about this that really leaves me scratching my head. How is it that airplanes land at the wrong airports? I know it seems silly, but I'm freaked out by that. I don't want to end up at the wrong airport. And we saw the case of the one plane that they barely could even get off that runway that it landed on.
Well, and that's certainly the biggest concern. There is the issue of inconvenience of landing at the wrong airport, but really the greater issue is safety. We've seen airplanes land at airports that cannot accommodate that size of aircraft with respect to safety margins, and that's very risky. And you want to make sure you always have good conditions, but in bad weather, rain, ice, snow, you want to make sure that you have a safety margin. Another issue is airplanes landing on taxiways. We've seen that happen too. And so what we do know is that human beings can make mistakes. That happens all the time. All of us have made wrong turns in our cars, and so we certainly can understand how people make mistakes. But we've issued a safety alert with respect to these wrong airport landings and wrong runway landings to make sure that people continue to use the technology that's available to them, and that air traffic controllers and pilots are working together to make sure that they're using their checklists and consistently doing what needs to be done. There's multiple people in the cockpit, and they need to be working together to help each other.
All right, so you're leaving the NTSB, and we won't see you at the crash sites anymore, but you're not leaving public service. You actually have a new gig. Talk about it.
Well, thanks. I'm actually going to be going to a nonprofit organization called the National Safety Council, and their mission is to save lives by preventing unintended deaths and injuries. And so it's really a super opportunity for me to continue my advocacy work on safety, and it won't just be limited to transportation, but it'll be also focused on the workplace and in communities and homes where a lot of our unintended deaths and injuries happen. And so we've got to be able to figure out how to make people safer.
So it's not a government agency; it's a private nonprofit.
Yes, it is.
All right, and when you say prevent preventable deaths and make our homes safer, can you give us an example of the kind of thing you're going to focus on?
Sure. Well, some of the items that the Safety Council is going to be focusing on are distracted driving, teen driving, which those are areas I'm very familiar with, but other areas such as workplace safety. We see a lot of accidents and injuries on the job, and so helping to drive those down, that's of course important to all of us. But other things that I think are newer issues that we need to be paying attention to, prescription drug overdoses have now overtaken motor vehicle deaths as the number one cause of unintended death for adults. And so trying to understand what's happening with prescription drugs and to help curtail those deaths is going to be another focus of ours.
Well, Deborah Hersman, I want to say thank you very much, and I've had the pleasure of having worked with you as a reporter in this town, and your reputation is very good, and I wish you all the best in your new venture.
Well, Brian, thank you. You are a gem, and I wish you and your family the best. It was a pleasure to work with you and to be with you guys on my last day.
All right. Thanks a lot. Deborah Hersman, outgoing chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board.